All right, we are now recording. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started, and I'll just let people in as they go. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first seminar of the year of the Jewish Federation's Professional Advisory Council for 2021 and 2022. So this seminar is Accumulating Wealth in Your 20s and 30s. How do I make a solid financial plan for the future? This is also being branded as #Adulting Professional Advisory Council Series. Professionals help simplify your financial journey. So my name is Shannon Small, and I'm the Assistant FRD Director and Foundation Director for the Jewish Federation of Nashville. I'll be facilitating and moderating today's seminar. So for those of you who are new, because we do have some new folks here, our Professional Advisory Council, which we refer to as the PAC, is a group of attorneys, accountants, financial planners, insurance brokers, and wealth advisors that provide education to the Jewish community related to wealth transfers, to families, and for charities. So it's financial and estate planning, but also for charitable giving purposes. So the presentation will be emailed out to everyone who attended the seminar today. If you have questions, we'd like to run through the presentation, but you can go ahead and either private chat them to me or do a group chat to everyone, choose everyone and go ahead and send your question. And then we'll get to questions at the end of the presentation. So today we will hear the presentation for our first half, and then the second half we'll go into those questions. So I'm going to introduce our speakers. So our first presenter is Mike Levine. Mike has been in the financial services business since 1987 and is a top of the table member of the $1 Million Roundtable. He's been featured as a speaker at many professional and business seminars, and his specialty is retirement income planning. He heads the Levine Group here in Nashville. Our second presenter is Marty Satinsky. He has been providing tax and financial planning services to individuals and businesses for over 40 years. And he has worked with regional and international accounting firms, including 7 years as a tax partner with Coopers and Lebrand. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike to start the presentation.
All right. Well, thank you, Shannon. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to share my screen here so that we can get started. Let's see here. There we go. Let's see if this slideshow kicks in.
Hold on, guy.
There we go. All right. Hopefully everybody can see the screen. Again, my name is Mike Levine. I'm with the Levine Group here in Nashville and one of the original PAC members. And we appreciate everybody being on the call today. Marty and I are going to be doing a tag team approach here. So what we're going to be talking about is the 6 things they did not teach you in school. So it's going to mostly be covering first just a quick picture of me and my firm. And I have to put up disclosures. You'll get a copy of this. Don't need to read through that. So what are the 6 things they didn't teach you in school? 1 is financial wellness. 2 is investing. 3, saving for retirement. 4, how to protect your assets. 5, property and casualty insurance. And 6, life and health insurance. So with that, we're first going to talk about financial wellness, and I'm going to turn it over to Marty and let Marty take this first half of this.
Okay, and I'm going to start by focusing on, believe it or not, just a quick touch on life insurance, only to say that, or insurance in general, not life insurance, but just to touch on the importance of insurance protection as part of a financial wellness. The worst thing that could happen is the what if. And having insurance in the budget to protect you is an important part of what you do as part of your financial, really an emotional wellness. Worrying about what if as much as the financial impact is really critical. Okay, so the first slide, what financial is and why it matters. financial is if our own definitions are bind us. They're really based on our needs, our desire, our income, current and goals, assets, and debt. So you put that together and you've got your financial wellness. What are your benefits? What are you looking for? All right. And we'll discuss the basic issues you should consider in evaluating your financial wellness. So moving on to the next slide. The goals, Mike. Mike, can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
All
Takes
right.
hey, Marty,
All
it
right.
takes a minute for it to
The
show on
goal
the
is
screen.
to look. It's okay. The goal is to lower the level of financial stress. We all have stresses of some kind, one or another. And life is stressful, and it's typically the unknown that creates more stress than anything else. And do you have enough money is always a big one. So gain control over your day-to-day spending. Stay on track to meet your goals. Handle unexpected expenses. Make choices that allow you to enjoy life. Not all unexpected expenses are emergencies or can be covered by insurance. For example, what if you have twins? You have unexpected expenses. All of a sudden, your kids, you've got twice as much, and one spouse may not be able to work as much, or both spouses may not be able to work as much, at least for the earlier years. Run with a cushion of funds all the time. So you want to strike a balance between living for today and planning for tomorrow. Strike that balance. The sooner you do it, the sooner you get into the habit of doing it, the better off you are. Financial wellness is your ability to manage your day-to-day finances, manage them while also saving for your long-term goals. It's easy to say and not necessarily easy to do if you're not an accountant, for example, or you're just not used to dealing with money, and heck, your parents have always just given you whatever you've needed in the past. You paid for school, or they paid for school, and now all of a sudden you're just dealing with money and your expenses and trying to do things that you want to do and always have been able to do, but someone else has paid for. So you want to plan for tomorrow, you want to create a budget. And that's really the key, is creating a budget, figuring out how much should I be spending, how much should I be saving. And we're really going to spend probably more time on that than anything else. Reducing debt and then saving for an emergency. And part of that saving for an emergency comes into what Michael covered with insurance. A plan for tomorrow. You set saving goals for vacations, for new homes. Enroll in a health savings account. Very, very, very plausible in many employment situations. And planning for retirement. Too many people just plain don't plan for retirement because when you're in your 20s or so, you don't think about retirement. When you're in your 20s and 30s, you don't think about retirement. I didn't think about retirement per se until my daughter, I'm from Philadelphia originally. We moved down to Nashville about 16, 18 years ago. My daughter got her degree in physical therapy up at Ithaca College in New York and had to get her practicums, her internships. So she puts a map up on the wall and throws darts. And one hit Nashville. And when she was down here, she kept kosher, we kept kosher. I was the president of the Jewish Community Center in Philadelphia at the time. I helped her find a place to stay. and the house where she stayed. The woman introduced her to the family whose son became her husband. And lo and behold, 4 years later, actually 5 years later, after 3 of her kids were born, we moved down to Nashville. Wasn't what I expected to do. Hopefully I had enough when I moved down, but I expected to continue with my practice up in Philadelphia for quite some time. Budget is a big step toward financial wellness and trying to get a balance as you're dealing with all these things. A lot of people don't know how to budget. They don't have the financial skills. Hey, I'm an accountant. It's easy for me to do that. There's a ton of software available. You just go online and just go to the browser and just say personal financial budget software, and they'll lead you to a whole bunch of stuff, and you'll find things that will do what you want. So you want to first focus on your financial asset balance, then your long-term goals, and then go from there. Get into the good habits early. It's difficult to change your habits once you've gotten into some bad habits and spending high, and then all of a sudden try to save. There's the other side of the coin where people will tend to spend frugally and save too much, and then have significant wealth when they die and not enjoy their lives as much as they can. So the concept of budgeting and balancing your net worth, your spending, what's important to you, and how to protect yourself is really a critical part of everything you try to put together. So going to the slide that's up there now, define your needs. There may also be an investment in the house, for example. Hey, for all we know, housing may end up being a potential for an increase in net worth down the road. Look at what's happened to the real estate market in astronomical. Schooling, transportation. Where's the best schools? Where do I live? Are public schools adequate? Should I be planning on private schools? What about Hebrew school? What's the best way to handle that? What are my wants, entertainment, hobbies? Where does the cost of insurance fit in all this, in savings, in wants, in needs? And it really kind of fits in all of them, because insurance covers the what ifs, if nothing else. So the foundation of every budget consists of what's your income, what are your expenses, and what's your goals. And you have to focus on short-term versus long-term. There is a balance for you. I know too many people who worried, as I mentioned before, too much about having inadequate funds, so they saved too much and ended up too wealthy. Know how much you have coming in. Knowing how much money you have coming in is really looking to what's your paycheck, how much is being pulled out in taxes, how much is being pulled out for insurance, retirement contributions, all those things reduce the amount of your net paycheck. The paycheck then should be focused in on what you need to maintain your lifestyle and what you want to save for the future. So look at your expenses. You have certain fixed expenses, mortgage or rent. Hopefully mortgages disappear after a period of years. Insurance, depending on the nature of the insurance may go up. Loan payments, payments. Hopefully they go down if you have a fixed interest expense, and after a period of time, the loan is paid off. Nice to have expenses: clothing, entertainment, gifts, travel. Variable expenses: groceries, they go up and down. Gas, we're seeing gas prices go up. Utilities obviously are going to go up as well. Annual and recurring expenses: property taxes are going up. Will they continually? Probably not. Different states have different taxes. Tennessee does not have much of an income tax on personal income. Pennsylvania, it's a critical part of their form of funding the state's needs. So don't forget your unexpected expenses. They will occur. It's not a question of if they occur, they will occur. So many different ways to create a budget. As I mentioned before, there are different software places to go. And I went online before the course and just did a simple personal budget tools, and found 3 different websites that were listed. It had 221,000 results listed in the search, but one was www.capterra.com, top 10 personal budget tools. Fundsmartresult.com, best fund budget tools. And then moneymap.aarp.org had another site with budgeting. And of course, Quicken. So there are tons of tools available to get the spreadsheets that work best for you. Life happens. That's why we have emergency funds. And don't overlook any of them, because they all will happen. You drop a cell phone, a car crash. Don't overlook it. They do happen. Insurance covers them, but there's certain things that you can't count on. Building and maintaining your emergency fund. The key thing here is it's recommended having enough in savings to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses. I'm going to add to that and let you know that the stock market historically, since the 1923 crash, even following the crash, has never taken more than 5 years to recover. Never more than 5 years to recover. So what does that tell you? One, the stock market is not a bad place to be if you're properly managed and have the funds in there effectively and properly balanced. And 2, if you don't need it for funds for that 5-year period. So when I'm dealing with a retiree, someone who's retiring from a large corporation, for example, and has significant funds and is worried about how to invest them, I ask them, I say, do you know what your budget is and what you need? Do you know how much cash you have and cash source investment and what your pension is? So then I say, then you don't have to worry about your stock investments because they'll take care of themselves over time. Historically, no guarantees of the future, but we're going back to 1923 rather, and it's never been an issue. So if you want to add a little from your paycheck, add your tax return, refund or bonus, and replenish your emergency fund after you use it. Don't let that emergency fund disappear. Okay, tips for getting rid of unwanted debt. The buffer between you and increased debt. First of all, use your emergency fund instead of a credit card to pay off unexpected expenses. Now, I use a credit card to pay for everything, except I pay it down to zero every month. So effectively, it's instead of carrying cash or using cash, you could use a debit card. And I know a lot of people who use a debit card. I don't like carrying cash, but I also don't have debt on my credit cards. So the cost of car repairs is an example we're going to be going through. Car repair of $1,200. Cost of pay with credit over 5 years at 18% interest is $1,828.33, which means you're spending $628.33 more. Tips for getting rid of your unwanted debt. Again, reduce debt, improve your financial wellness, and is a great way to boost your savings, to help you boost your savings. Create and stick to a budget. Use cash or a debit card, as we've talked about, and so forth. Moving on from there. Okay, so we have a plan for digging yourself out of debt. And this is a good example, a really good example. Depending on how large your credit card balances are, it could take you years to pay them off. Shorten your payoff time. Don't add to the balance on your card. Pay $100 more each month. It can make a big difference. Again, in our example, start with maybe after the card with the draw on the card with the highest interest rate. Start with drawing on the card with the highest interest rate. Keep making minimum payments on other cards. So you want to pay down all the cards, but pay down on the cards with the highest debt. So here we see a balance of $11,000, minimum payment of $215. Total interest over time will be $17,225, and you were going to be paying $100 minimum payment on the largest portion with the largest rate, and then $75 minimum payments, $75 minimum payment on the 10%, and a $40 minimum payment on the $3,000 balance at 5%, at 8%. It's going to take us 8 years and 9 months, and cost us $17,225. If you take it the next step, you're going to see that if you pay off at $315 a month rather than the $215, so you increase your payment by $100. It's only going to take 26 months, and you'll have $200 each month to apply to the remaining cards after 26 months. After 8 months, you'll have an extra $315 each month, and we'll pay off your debt in 3 years, 9 months, rather than the 8 years and 9 months, and save $3,050 in interest. It's easy for me to say these things because I've been lucky enough to be able to do them. What's so critical is not getting yourself to a point where you spend more than you can afford and get yourself into the hole where your debt is unmanageable. So you want to focus on staying debt-free. Every debt you pay off adds to your monthly disposable income and adds to your savings for the future. Maintain good spending habits and credit discipline to stay out of debt in the future. Stay on top of payments, pay in full each month, realize the true cost of purchases made with credit, and set up emergency funds to help avoid future credit card use. Okay, now what do I do with the funds? That talks about investing. Okay, do I just put them into a checking account? No. Do I put them into a savings account? Well, you want to flip the slide, Mike?
Trying to.
There we go. We're talking about the investing, and next one is the taxation of investing. Taxation of investments. All right. What's the issue with the taxation of investments? We've got taxable income on interest of checking, savings, and CDs. It's taxable. Dividends from stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Dividends are typically taxable. The only time you may not have a dividend is when you're involved with or have a taxable dividend is really when you have a distribution from a company that doesn't have any net worth. It doesn't have any accumulated net worth other than the stock. So it hasn't got the earnings that's being distributed, and you really don't want to be in that situation. So what about capital gains? Short-term capital gains are taxed at ordinary income tax rates. Long-term capital gains, you have the long-term capital gain rates, which have historically been lower, which means holding on to capital longer. As I mentioned earlier, with the person I was dealing with as he retired, leaving his assets in his stock market account, his marketable securities, and not worrying about the roller coaster that may be occurring, allowed him to hold on to the investments till they regrew, and longer time capital gains, lower tax rates. And then you have tax-free municipal bonds. The only issue you have to watch out with municipal bonds is you do not want to use borrowed funds. You don't want to borrow money to buy municipal bonds, because then the interest on the bonds, the interest on the debt incurred to purchase the bonds will be traced if you're audited, and that interest will not be deductible. Okay, Mike, it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Marty. Well, we missed one slide here. The taxation of investments, tax deferred. So if you're in a 401k at work, or you have IRAs or annuities,
right,
those all grow. That's all right. They all grow tax deferred. And then there are certain things that grow tax deferred and aren't actually tax free. Roth IRAs are a great investment, and life insurance also grows tax deferred, and the death benefit is tax free. So let's
the neat thing about Roth IRAs, Mike, the neat thing about Roth IRAs is, and you got to be careful with them, is that Roth IRAs are funded with after-tax dollars, so that you're not, that's why they're not taxable when you get the distributions from them.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Grow tax free and you pull it off tax free. So let's talk about the rule of 72. Right. I always love educating people about the rule of 72. The rule of 72 talks about how long it takes money to double. So what you do is you take an interest rate and you divide it into 72. And then that number is the number of years it takes money to double. So for example, if you got an 8% rate of return and you divided it into 72, that means money would double every 9 years. And I love this quote. According to Albert Einstein, compound interest was not only man's greatest invention, it's also the most powerful force on earth. So how does the rule of 72 look? So here, if you have $10,000 at the age of 30 and you got an 8% rate of return, that money will double every 9 years. So your 10,000 becomes 20 at age 39, becomes 40 at age 48, becomes 80,000 at age 57, and then 66 becomes 160,000. So if you think about that, $10,000 isn't a lot today, but $160,000, yes, we do have to worry about inflation, but it is amazing how fast money can grow. And if you're able to put away $10,000 per year in an investment, so if you are investing in your 401k and your company is matching, it could be very easy to put away $10,000 per year. At an 8% over those same number of years, you would actually accumulate over $2 million. So that's what we talk when we talk about the time value of money. The slide you're seeing right here is 4 different investors. So you got 4 people at the age of 25 investing. Consistent Chloe is putting in $5,000. They're all putting in $5,000 annually. Consistent Chloe put in $5,000 a year from ages 25 to 65, earning only 6% rate of return. So she puts in $200,000, and that's accumulated over $800,000. Late Lila didn't start to age 35. She always had a reason not to invest. So she puts in $150,000, and that amount only grows to $419,000. So she really missed out on this first 10 years. Quitter Quincy invested money early, invested money for only 10 years, so only put in $50,000. And what's amazing is he's got almost as much as Late Lila, who put in 3 times as much. And then you got Nervous Noah. Nervous Noah was really nervous about the market, and I agree with Marty. You definitely need to have some money in equities. But Nervous Noah put all his money in cash that over time earned an average of 2%. And you'll see, even though he put in $200,000, that only grew to $300,000. Basically, it's never too late to start. But the earlier you start to invest, the more money you're going to have. Let's talk about retirement savings. Now, I know a lot of the people on this call are young, but again, it's never too early to start. Most financial planners recommend you need 70 to 90% of your pre-retirement income to live comfortably in retirement. So where does that money come from? Well, a lot of people depend on Social Security. Most of the companies these days do not have pensions, but they all have retirement plans, usually 401ks or 403bs if you work for a nonprofit. And then you've got your income from assets and you've got income from earnings. So those are basically the places you have money. You might have some other money invested elsewhere. So let's talk a little bit about Social Security. See if I can get the slide to move. Social Security, when I do 401k education meetings, I always ask people, show of hands, who think they're going to get Social Security benefits. And rarely do I have any hands show up. But if Social Security is not making any changes, there will be a reduction of 23% in the year 2037. So that means anybody who's on Social Security will get a 23% cut in pay. That will not happen. The government will not allow that to happen. And there are 4 fixes to maintain the current benefit levels. One is the increased taxes. They're already talking about doing that. Number 2, you only pay Social Security taxes on the first $137,000 of income. They're talking about raising that. They also are talking about something called means testing. Right now, when you get on Medicare, how much you pay for Medicare is dependent on your income. And those that have higher income pay more for Medicare. That's going to probably happen with Social Security. And then bad news for all the young people on this call, they will most likely be raising the retirement age. Back in the 80s, they raised the age for my generation from 65 to 67. And I do believe that they're going to probably raise that from 67 up to 70. Talk about protecting your assets. The slide to move. So there's a lot of ways to protect your assets. One way you want to protect is from lawsuits. You can use trusts that you'll need to work with an attorney to set up. And then life insurance is creditor proof. So if you have a life insurance policy that has a cash value to it, the creditors cannot access that, nor can they access your retirement plan balances. So anything in a Roth, anything in a 401k, anything in an IRA, those are protected from lawsuits. So number 5, let's talk about insurance. Marty talked a lot about insurance. There's really 2 different types of insurance, 2 different sections of insurance. One is what we call P&C, or property and casualty. This includes your homeowner's insurance. Everybody has to have car insurance. If you're renting an apartment, you maybe have renter's insurance, error and emissions insurance, umbrella, and maybe malpractice insurance for doctors. And then on what we call the life and health side. So this is your health insurance you have through work, life insurance, disability insurance, and then long-term care insurance. Long-term care covers nursing homes and home health care. So first, let's talk about the property and casualty insurance. Let's talk about car insurance. So car insurance has two different areas. One is called liability. That's if you were to hit somebody and you're liable, then they can sue you. And so your car insurance, your liability covers you for that. And then there's property damage. So if you hit somebody's mailbox, that's property damage. And so your insurance will pay for another car or for property. We recommend to insure at the highest limits possible. It's what we call a 300-500. You can insure for less, but as your income grows and as your assets grow, we recommend that you raise your limits so that if it's a very bad accident, that if it goes over those limits, they're not going to come after you personally. Renter's insurance. Renter's insurance is basically your content. So if your apartment burns down and you have computers and TVs and couches and all those kind of things, renter's insurance will cover you, will reimburse you to get all that back. Homeowner's insurance. Homeowner's insurance is very important. You are required to have that if you have a mortgage. We recommend you have it even if you don't have a mortgage. So the homeowner's insurance will cover liability in case someone slips and falls on your property, and also a replacement coverage in case your house were to burn down. It's very unlikely that that will ever happen, but I will tell you that I've had 2 house fires in my 35 years of house ownership. So it definitely can happen. And then there's umbrella insurance. Umbrella insurance is just what it sounds like. It's an umbrella. It covers once you hit those limits on your car insurance or your homeowner's insurance. So the umbrella insurance usually comes in what we call $1 million policies, either 1 million, 2 million, or 4 million. It's very inexpensive, maybe $100 or $200 a year. And we do highly recommend that, especially as your assets grow. You want to make sure you protect from anybody suing you and getting a hold of your assets. Let's talk about life and health insurance. Let's first talk about health insurance. Health insurance, there's 2 basic kinds of health insurance. One is what we call the traditional, where you have a deductible, you maybe have some co-pays to go see the doctor or the emergency room. And then what is becoming more and more popular is what are called high deductible health plans, HDHP. And inside a high deductible health plan, there's a health savings account, usually. A health savings account is where you have money deducted from your pay, similar to a 401k. A lot of times the companies will match or put money in there for you. And the HSA is triple tax benefits. It's tax deductible when you put the money into the HSA. It grows tax-free. Most of them allow you to put money in the mutual funds inside the HSA. And then when you spend money on your healthcare needs, that money is used tax-free. So if you buy eyeglasses or hearing aids, or you go in the hospital and you have your high deductible of $4,000, you can use the money from your HSA all tax-free. So if you have that available, we highly recommend you use it. If you don't use it one year, that money just carries over for the next year and can roll on indefinitely. Disability insurance. Disability insurance is usually provided from your work. I highly recommend disability insurance. When I first got in the business in 1987, my father got cancer and my brother hit a tree. Both of them were disabled in the same year. They're both, so they were both receiving disability payments, which is very unusual, but it can definitely happen. So what does disability insurance do? It pays you if you cannot work due to illness or accident. So if something happens to you and you're laid up, your employer is not going to keep paying you when they have to pay someone else to do your job. So that's what disability insurance does. So there's short-term and then there's long-term disability. Long-term disability has a 90-day elimination period. It usually pays you to your normal retirement age, which is 67 for most people on this call. And it's typically tax-free. So the money that you would receive would be tax-free from the insurance company. It's usually up to 60% of your income. And then you want to make sure, especially if you buy an individual policy, it has residual, or what we call a partial disability. By the way, the tax-free depends whether it's an individual or a group policy. If you have a group policy at work, most of those are taxable. If you buy an individual policy, most of those are tax-free. If you buy an individual policy, the great thing about that is the premiums will never go up. Most of them are what's called non-cancelable, guaranteed renewable. And I still have my first policy from 1987 because obviously I was a lot younger then and I could never buy that same policy today for that premium. So buy it as early as you can and as much as you can because you can carry it on throughout your entire working career. And then if you do have group, you can layer your group on top. And again, that's generally paid for by the employer. What about life insurance? So I saw this quote one time on life insurance and I just loved it. Life insurance is just a time yellowed piece of paper with columns and figures and legal phrases until it is baptized with the widow's tears. Then it is a modern miracle, an Aladdin's lamp. It is food, clothing, shelter, education, peace of mind, comfort, and undying love and affection. It is the most sincere love letter ever written. I'm a true believer in life insurance. I have seen it help a lot of families. Whoops, sorry, one too many there. So life insurance really comes in two flavors. One is term insurance. So term insurance usually comes in a 10, a 15, a 20, and a 30-year term. For instance, when my kids were very young, we bought 20-year term policies so that would get them through college. But you can also buy 30-year terms. You can even buy terms to 100. And then they also have what's called a return of premium terming policy, where if you pay on it, you pay more, but then at the end of the 20 years, then you get all your money back. So instead of the money going down the drain, like renting an apartment, you actually get your money back. On the other side is permanent or cash value policies. So those come in some different flavors also. One is whole life insurance, universal life, variable universal life, and index universal life. So there are advantages to both. Let's first talk about term insurance. Term insurance is very inexpensive. If you have a male age 30 in excellent health, a $1 million policy for someone age 30 for a 10-year term is only $235 a year. That's very inexpensive. Even a 20-year term is only $370, and a 30-year term to get them to age 60 is only $618 a year. So term insurance is very inexpensive, and you should definitely, and that's for $1 million of coverage. You can also layer your policy. So you can buy a certain amount for 20 years to get the kids through college and some for 30 years to get you to retirement, maybe. Again, it's generally recommended early in a career. If you have a short-term need, or we also sell a lot of term insurance for buy-sell agreements. If you have two business partners and you have to decide what happens in case one of them dies. And then there's cash value policies. So cash value policies, we sometimes call it Roth on steroids because a Roth, you have a limit to how much you can put in, but a cash value life insurance policy works a lot like a Roth. And we'll have another slide on that in just a minute. But life insurance premiums go in after tax. It grows tax deferred, and you can pull the money out of a life insurance policy tax-free. What are the uses for cash value policies if you have a permanent need? So if you just want to always have that life insurance for your family no matter when you die. It's also a great use for charitable planning. You can actually buy a policy and make the charity the beneficiary. And you can also gift to a charity a policy you may not need anymore. Life insurance retirement planning is a great use for permanent life insurance, long-term care planning, and then estate planning. Estate planning is a topic for another day, but life insurance has some great uses for that too. We do use life insurance a lot for retirement planning. We call it a Roth on steroids. The money goes in after tax, it grows tax-free, and you can pull the money out tax-free in retirement. So very much like a Roth. The nice thing about it is that there's no limit to how much money you put into one of these. We do recommend that you max out your tax deductible dollars first, because you want to be able to get, especially if you're in a high tax bracket, you want to get those tax deductions. Other advantages is a flexible premium. It is available for age 59 and a half. So if you're investing in your 401k, there are penalties for accessing that money before age 59 and a half, whereas life insurance, you can access it anytime. It's also very flexible on how you take the income out. So that wraps up the 6 things they didn't teach you in school: financial wellness, reduced debt, reduce stress. Investing, time is on your side. The younger you start, the more money you accumulate. Saving for retirement, we definitely recommend you start now if you're not already doing it. Number 4, protecting the assets. The more you have, the more you are a target. Number 5, property and casualty insurance, get under the umbrella. And number 6, life and health insurance. Disability insurance is a must. With that, Shannon, that wraps up the presentation. I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. I just wanted to thank Mike and Marty for their presentation. We have come to the question and answer portion. If any of the participants have a question, you can feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. I'll be paying attention to the chat. I did get a few questions privately that were sent to me, so I'm going to go ahead and ask those. But at any point, if someone has a question, please feel free to ask. So this question came around the time we were talking about budget, and that can go to either Mike or Marty, either one of you. So they understand that there are different ways that they can make a budget, and there are different resources they can use. I think they said they've experienced some frustration with creating the budget because there's always like little expenses and things they didn't take into account when they were creating the budget. And so, you know, if they check their bank statements, their credit cards, like what are some of the things that people forget to put in there is what they're getting at.
I would say that one of the things that people forget are things that are paid annually. So if you pay your property taxes directly, or let's say your car insurance every 6 months, that's not going to show up in your monthly budget. So anything that you do pay other than monthly, you definitely want to break that out into a 12-month budget.
Okay. And then another question came in around the time we were talking about investments. They were wondering, as far as when they're investing, should, you know, if they're in their 20s, early 30s, should they be investing more in the long-term gains or for short-term gains? Like, how does that work?
It really depends. Go ahead, Marty.
Go ahead, Mike, and I'll respond.
Well,
It's goal-oriented. Go ahead.
All right. So the younger you are, the more you should be in equities. As Marty said earlier, when the market does go down, the market always has come back. History repeats itself. Every time the market's gone down, it's gone back. And if the younger you are, the more aggressive you should be. You just, I recommend my clients to not follow it every day because it will drive you crazy. So put the money in, let it grow, and don't worry about it. When you get close to retirement, that's when you need to start taking a closer look at it. I'd recommend working with a financial advisor. They can help you make those decisions.
Yeah. If you're thinking long-term, stocks are the way to go. If you need cash out of your investments, then you have to balance between a bond or a high-paying dividend stock. But as long as you don't need the cash and you've properly balanced out your expenses and know what's going on with your normal income from your livelihood, I lean towards stocks most of the time.
That kind of leads to a different question I got, which was, how should their investments be split at this age? Like, you know, percentage wise.
Again, the younger you are, the more equities you should have. So if you're in your 20s and 30s, you should have mostly all equities. And as you get older, We call it the glide path. Think of a plane coming in for a landing. As you get older, the equity should go down a little bit and the fixed income or bonds should go up. But at this age, for young people, we highly recommend all equities or majority equities.
And then
And don't try to necessarily do it by yourself. Get professional guidance. Use a broker that you trust for a while, or learn about investing in equities.
Yeah, and one of our participants, Jessica, just put into the group chat for the budgeting piece, going back there for a second. Could you put in a miscellaneous category because you didn't think of all your expenses? But then I guess the question would be, how much should you put in a miscellaneous category for expenses in case you forgot something?
Well, my recommendation would be when you're doing budgeting, it's really change it as you go. And I would start with maybe 10% in the other category. And then as you go through it month by month, and when you're ready for next year's budget, you'll kind of have an idea of what those pop-up things were.
I agree.
Yeah. Another question I got is, what is the best type of retirement plan? I think we all know that your work offers certain ones and whatnot, but when you're late 20s, early 30s, and you're offered all these options, like what typically works best?
So I'd recommend if most employers these days have Roth options available through work. If you're in a low tax bracket, so my kids are 31 and 29, and I recommend both of them to put money in their Roth because their tax rate is lower today than it's going to be when they make more money. So it's not costing them a lot because they're having to put that Roth money goes in after tax, but they're in a lower tax bracket. If I've got clients that are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s and they're making a lot of money, then I recommend to put it in what we call traditional or take the tax break now because you're in a higher tax bracket.
Great. Are there any, creative ways that people in their late 20s, early 30s can think about anything that they wanted to do charitably, even if it's a small bit? Is there a best way, best vehicle, best way to think about giving charitably?
I would start number one with time. And the reason for that is twofold. One, it gets them involved and they understand and they see what a charity is and the needs of a charity. And that leads them to then starting to fund charities and funding those organizations that need funds. And then it becomes part of the budget and part of their tax planning. But in your 20s, that's where I would start. You start putting a little money in, things that are important. To me, it was always the Hillel or Jewish Federation or whatever it might be, was I was first getting started and the synagogue, because those are the things that I was focused on as I grew up. But I also worked in other organizations as well. And because of that, I started seeing the needs that were far more pervasive and greater.
Mike, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Marty summed it up
great.
very nicely.
Well, now that we're at the 1 o'clock time, I'm just going to wrap us up very quickly. I wanted to thank Marty and Mike for presenting. This seminar was sponsored by the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville, Middle Tennessee. And we house two funds that help support this program, the Joe Kraft Professional Advisory Program Fund and the Harris A. and Diane Gilbert Area of Interest Fund for Education. And I wanted to thank you guys for joining us. We hope that we've given you some valuable information that will assist you in getting started in your financial and estate planning journey, as well as empowering you to fulfill your philanthropic passions and commitment to charitable causes. If you're interested in signing up for future seminars, if you go to jewishnashville.org/ways-to-give/PAC, our new registration link should be up in a couple of months. Our next seminar is in December. On that link is a brochure and then a roster of all our PAC members. And then we'll be posting information about our next session on social media, Fed Focus, and The Observer. So I just wanted to thank everyone and wish you a great rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.